Ahmad Hardy sure looks like a younger and possibly more explosive version of Nate Noel to me. So let's talk about the newest Tiger and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And before I start the program, I do want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. And later, I want to talk about another Missouri player from this most recent freshman class entering the transfer portal. This time, it's Courtney Crutchfield, the wide receiver from Arkansas. Also, I'm realizing maybe I should spend less time talking about Fernando Mendoza, at least until the erstwhile Cal quarterback at least sets up a visit with the Tigers at the very least. But you know what? Let's start with some good news here because Missouri has signed a running back out of the transfer portal after Kewan Lacey, another true freshman who entered the portal. Speaking of Crutchfield and that 24 class, well, it was kind of apparent that Missouri needed a running back once Lacey entered the portal, and perhaps Missouri would have been in that market anyway. But I'm not sure that they would have gotten somebody as good as Ahmad Hardy had Lacey still been in the fold, because this player from Louisiana Monroe last season as a freshman rushed for over 1,300 yards and had 13 touchdowns as well. And just as importantly to me, you look at his highlights and he really looks the part as well. I think he looks, number one, really explosive on film, and I think the Tigers are definitely getting a good one here. The GIFs that I saw shared online of a bunch of his most explosive runs, well, a lot of them were outside zone type runs, by the way. So that's one reason why I think he's kind of the next Nate Noel, because Nate Noel, a guy who was at App State for 4 years, obviously at a lower level than the SEC, but a guy who was really productive and also very much ran a similar run scheme at App State that Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore like to employ, that outside zone heavy run scheme. Well, I think just like Nate Noel before him, I think Ahmad Hardy fits that particular scheme quite well. And not only that, there's pictures of him, there's highlights of him also running the pistol dive read, for lack of a better term, in describing that play. Basically, what I would say is Missouri's second most frequently used run play. Well, Ahmad Hardy was running that down at Louisiana Monroe too. So I'm guessing there won't be much of a learning curve here for Hardy. I think he proved already he can run in this scheme as a freshman. As a sophomore, he should just be able to take off, one would think. And Brian Galvin, who is a football scout online, said that Hardy's a player he's been paying attention to since early on this past season, and quote, "Boy, is this guy hard to bring down." Hardy forced 94 missed tackles, according to PFF this past season. And by the way, you watch his highlights, and as Marge Simpson would say, he's quite the little dancer as well. A lot of swag to his game, throwing down the Ray Lewis touchdown dance celebration. And frankly, when you're as good as he looks on film, why not have a little bit of swag to you? So I got to think Ahmad Hardy is going to be a really popular addition to the Missouri Tigers next season. I really think the Tigers found a gem here at the running back position. So while obviously I think Ahmad Hardy being added to the Missouri roster is great news in the portal, unlike the last couple of cycles, it hasn't all been good news for Missouri in the portal this offseason. And unfortunately, from the state of Arkansas, former highly rated high school player, true freshman at Missouri this past season, Courtney Crutchfield, has entered the transfer portal. And now with Crutchfield in the portal, to go along with Williams Nwaneri, Keywan Lacey, and also Jalen Brown as well. It's pretty easy to make the argument that Missouri has lost its 4 top players from this past true freshman class of players. And quite honestly, the more I look at this and the more we go along in time here, high school recruiting just seems growingly more pointless to talk about, it would seem, because yeah, in the past, high school players, they would take a while to pay off for the most part and yield actual dividends, but at least they would get there eventually. Nowadays, obviously, stuff is starting to change in a big way. For example, why am I supposed to get excited that Keaton Jones, a big offensive lineman, talented young player who is part of the 2025 class for Missouri, well, am I supposed to be excited that he made the All-American Bowl? I mean, is that something I'm supposed to be like tweeting out and going, hey, good job, young fella? Am I really supposed to be emotionally invested in Jackson Cantwell's recruitment at this point? Now, maybe a guy like Cantwell is an exception. Obviously, a Missouri legacy player, his father, Christian, a great shot putter at Missouri, silver medalist back in 2008, by the way, in that event. Maybe he would have some more reasons to stick around Missouri than just whatever the highest offer is, for example. So I do think there is something to the effect of, hey, what if Missouri is recruiting guys that really the only reason they're coming to Missouri is because, well, the Tigers were the highest bidder? I think in retrospect, it's pretty easy to say that about Keywan Lacey, without offending anyone too brutally there, in my opinion. Well, great. When you get them for that one season, don't get me wrong, I'm not against anybody trying to maximize their worth or get the most money they can in that free agency process, but just you got to look at it from the other side too. Because not only from Eli Drinkwitz's perspective, but all of these donors to NIL as well, hey, great, we got this great true freshman class, but then when they're sophomores, if you then have to immediately go back to the negotiating table, well, that's kind of a little bit awkward for everybody involved, because after a year, you've gone from this glittering, bright 4-star, 5-star player in the case of Lacey and Nwaneri, and of course, the latest transfer out as well in Courtney Crutchfield. Well, now, after a year of being a true freshman, where Crutchfield, for example, played 10 snaps this season, well, is your perception the same? I don't think that it is. So there's going to be a lot of this, guy. But other schools are going to tell themselves that, hey, we're going to develop them better. We haven't seen them fail. Not that any of this is failure per se. Of course, Crutchfield can still go on to have a great career. Nwaneri, all of these guys. But my point here is that if every single year you're going to come back to the negotiating table, well, some of these guys need to get used to the idea that, yeah, my value is going to change from year to year too, and not always in a good way. In fact, your best moment of negotiation may be coming out of high school, and then to go back after a true freshman season where you've had no production, you can understand why maybe Missouri is balking a little bit at, say, giving you a raise. Maybe we'll give you what we got last season, but a raise? Well, if you can go get it in the free market, congratulations to you. And I think that is a lot of what the frustration Eli Drinkwitz was expressing yesterday to the media when he said, I value production over potential. I think that's a lot what Drinkwitz was getting to there. Listen, guys, if you want to get that bag, that's fine, but I'm going to go out and recruit other players too, because as Drinkwitz has said, I value production over potential. Without even him directly saying that, it's been obvious that Drinkwitz has always leaned on seniors, experienced players when he can, and considering how everything is going with his high school recruiting in year 2, essentially, with these guys, a ballyhooed class that is now the top 4 players arguably have moved on. I think Drinkwitz, if anything, is going to lean into experience and finding experienced players in the portal even more than ever. And coming up, I want to update you all on the Missouri quarterback situation, including a valid comment from a reader about Fernando Mendoza that I really did have to take under advisement. So let's update everything happening in the quarterback transfer portal market here in a minute. But first, did you know Rocket Money can help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings, brings everything together all in one place. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year, Rocket Money has more than 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And for me, I've got multiple emails. I've just accidentally ended up subscribing to like multiple streamers, for instance. Rocket Money is going to make this all so simple for you. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And Gametime is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is just that much better, and it's the perfect gift as well. By the way, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes it even easier to get tickets to live events. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And when it comes to covering the quarterback transfer portal market from the Tigers' perspective, I've really tried to cast as wide of a net as I possibly can here, talking about, well, mostly what Missouri fans are talking about and the Missouri beat writers as well. And one of those guys, without a doubt, has been Fernando Mendoza, who entered the transfer portal, formerly a Cal Bear. Well, Darren Moore has been upset with me online. He's posted this at least once, I think multiple times on my YouTube channel. He says, "Why do you keep talking about Mendoza? He doesn't even have Mizzou on his short list." Well, as for Mendoza's short list, you know, the young man's been pretty quiet so far. I don't know that we know what his short list is. But to Darren's point here, I do have to say he does have a point, because all I know is, despite the fact that Missouri people are talking about Mendoza a lot, well, now all I'm seeing is that he went on a visit to Indiana. That's about the only official thing, the only official piece of information that I'm aware of. And also there's rumors that now Bill Belichick in North Carolina are possibly kicking the tires on Mendoza as well. Maybe there really is no interest from Fernando Mendoza's perspective. That really is quite possible. I'm really not sure about any of that. So, you know what? To Darren's point, I've updated you here. Unless Missouri sets up a visit with Mendoza, maybe at this point there isn't that much point in talking about him. Perhaps we stick to Pavia, the backup Penn State quarterback who reportedly did actually make a visit to Missouri. Miller Moss did as well before ultimately deciding to go to Louisville. And by the way, just some other quick updates here on some notable quarterbacks and some guys Missouri fans have been talking about. Had a lot of listeners and even some of my best friends talking to me about John Mateer, formerly of Washington State. Well, as had been anticipated for probably at least a week or so, Mateer, when he went into the portal, is going to Oklahoma, following his old offensive coordinator from Washington State down to Norman, Oklahoma. Also, Caden Salter, a guy that some Missouri fans were interested in, formerly of Liberty, going to be following Coach Prime to Colorado and replacing his son, Shedeur Sanders, reportedly, at least presumably, as their starting quarterback. Now, Colorado has a big-time high school player, five-star guy that will be competing for that job as well, so we'll just have to see what happens there. But regardless, Salter, a guy that some Missouri fans were interested in, had been maybe rumored to Auburn at one point with the Hugh Freeze connection, but settling in Boulder, Colorado. By the way, something I should clean up from yesterday's program, I believe that along with Brett Norfleet, who is sitting out the bowl game having a surgical procedure done, well, Chuck Hicks, I think I also may have implied or even directly stated that Chuck Hicks was injured, but it turns out he's just simply opting out of the bowl game. This according to Hicks' own words. He simply wants to spend the holidays with his wife and kids, and considering Chuck has played about 7 years of college football at this point, maybe that's a little bit understandable. At least from Eli Drinkwitz's perspective, he immediately quote tweeted Hicks saying that it's all love. We are proud of you. So no hard feelings from Drinkwitz's perspective there, according to social media. But I will say a different perspective. Theo Weiss, another guy who's played a lot of college football, said he never really considered opting out of the Music City Bowl, saying he just loves playing the game too much to skip it. I would point out that Theo Weiss has a young child as well. No shade being thrown there. Just the facts, ma'am, as we all like to say. But by the way, speaking of the facts, I really don't like the fact that Braggin Rights is at noon this year on Sunday afternoon. Number one, Sunday afternoon feels awkward, but just the afternoon in general for a Braggin Rights basketball game, to me, this is a night game and always has been. I know that there's been day games played in the past, but that's just always felt weird to me. About as awkward as Missouri playing in an empty Mizzou arena against Illinois and Braggin Rights a few years ago during COVID. Almost as awkward as that. But to me, get the game on in prime time. Give me a Tuesday at 7 or 8 o'clock is much better than a Sunday at noon. I just don't love that from any perspective. And speaking of things I've recently got wrong, well, I try not to comment on things I don't know about. I really do. So I made a mistake on the squad show last week when the Diego Pavia suit was brought up, him trying to get another year of eligibility out of the NCAA. Well, I dismissively and sarcastically said, good luck to Diego Pavia. Whoops. Turns out Diego Pavia won that case. He's got another year of football coming toward him. Likely at Vanderbilt, it would seem, but he's free to go wherever else, as the court case made clear. Basically, the grounds here was that his junior college year should not have counted. It should not have started his eligibility clock. And here's the thing, this ruling is specific to Diego Pavia for now, but this seems to break open a lot of possibilities for others to sue and win on similar grounds. To be honest with you, I can think of a pretty prominent player. You might have heard of him named Brady Cook, who, if he wanted to, I'm not saying he's going to do this whatsoever, I just think if he wanted to, he would probably have a case against that. Hey, my fifth game in 2021, it was the Armed Forces Bowl. Well, that rule is no longer in place. So can I get a reverse grandfathering, that type of deal? My thing is, if Diego Pavia can win on that, my point is Cook or someone similar, a Chuck Hicks, maybe he can get an eighth year, something like that on some type of grounds. My whole thing is the fact that Pavia won this obviously surprised me a little bit, but regardless, I just think this opens up the door ajar for a whole lot of similar cases. So it's going to be interesting. If you thought the days of 5-6 year players post-COVID was coming to an end as I did, well, hold your horses. We might not be there just yet. And when it comes to the college football playoff, I have to say, I do find it ironic that in the first year of the 12-team playoff, the old BCS system would have worked out just fine this year. So I want to talk about that and make some picks for the college football playoff. Got a bunch of thoughts on this first-time event coming up in just a bit. But speaking of the playoff, yes, it's that time of year. The playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. So if we had the BCS system this year, who could really argue with Oregon against Georgia? What would be the beef with that particular matchup? Because, of course, Oregon, well, Penn State, your 6th seed, Oregon beat them. Ohio State, your 8th seed, Oregon beat them. Look at Texas, your 5 seed. Well, guess what? Georgia beat them twice. There really is nobody who has an argument to be in there over Georgia or Oregon. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, for crying out loud. So to me, it is ironic that in all of the seasons, this is kind of the perfect top 2 BCS year of all. But don't get me wrong, I'm still going to be watching these games, and while there is not a single game that is less than a touchdown here in the first round over at FanDuel Sportsbook, oddly, when I first saw Texas against Clemson, and I say oddly because I believe that is the highest line currently of all. Let me check that real quick. Yes, that is indeed correct. 11.5. Texas is favored over Clemson. There's just something a little awkward still to me about the Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning situation that makes me pause a little bit with Texas, but I don't know, it just seems like that defense, the other side of the ball, is good enough that they should be able to take care of business against Clemson. But something about that game, I've got Texas a little bit on upset watch. I don't think I have the balls to take anybody else, though, in terms of an upset. And I can't even take Clemson straight up. That's a little bit too much of a reach for me. 11.5 points to take an outright winner more often than not. I really think Notre Dame's going to take care of Indiana pretty easily. And by the way, speaking of the next round, the quarterfinals, are you ready for Boise State and SMU in the next round? Because that very much is a possibility. And here's the thing, and this is why I'm making fun of that, because here's my problem with the 12-team playoff, especially if we're going to guarantee a team like Boise State a 3 seed. The problem with Boise State and SMU in the quarterfinals is neither one of those teams will have a dog's chance in hell of winning the national championship. And if you think that's hyperbolic, well, it is a little bit, but not much. In fact, go over to my friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. They'll tell you that SMU is currently 40-1 to win the national championship. Boise is 60-1, despite having a bye and the 3 seed. In fact, Boise has the worst odds in the entire tournament. They're telling you that Boise doesn't have a chance here. I just point out, again, not a single first-round game is under a touchdown. So for all the people who want more home games into the quarterfinals, that type of deal, I see your point in terms of atmosphere. I'm not sure it's great for the actual games on the field. Quite honestly, I'm just hoping we get one competitive and entertaining football game out of 4 this weekend. I think that's about as good as you can hope for. Maybe all 4 of them will be tremendous. That'd be great. I just don't think you can honestly expect that. And when it comes to the winner of this whole thing, I think I just got to stick with Oregon at this point. They've proven to be the most consistent and best team all year long. I'd say Georgia has a little bit of an easier path getting to play Boise State in the next round. And there's really not any long shots that I like either. And back to Georgia, by the way, I skipped over that. Obviously, Carson Beck and his questionable status, well, not really questionable. Let's just say the quarterback situation for Georgia is questionable right now. And there's just no real good values on the long shots either. For example, Penn State, if you think they're a long shot to win the thing, well, here's the problem. Their odds are 5.5 to 1, plus 550 to win the entire thing. I think you'd be much better off just simply betting on Penn State on the money line 4 games in a row and, just carrying it over, trying to do that and hit 4 in a row than you are the 5.5 to 1 for them to just win the whole thing on a futures bet. So to that point as well, I just don't think any sports book, including FanDuel, to be brutally honest, gives you good value on futures these days. So really, in reality, SMU and Boise State are probably even longer shots than the 40 to 1 and 60 to 1 would have you believe. And I will say, I thought the point of the expanding the playoff was to get teams in there that actually had a chance to win and deserved a chance to win. I'm not really sure that's the case in either one of those particular teams. But hey, you're free to disagree, and feel free to in the YouTube comments, at social media anywhere at Locked On Mizzou, or email form lockedonmizzou@gmail.com. And spoiler alert, I'm not on the squad show this evening. Had to go to a child's dance contest, as I often do instead. So I would encourage you to listen to it anyway. I definitely will want to hear all the guys and their thoughts on the playoff. So until next time, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.